I call David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I want to just carry on where Stuart Nash just left off, because I think he's absolutely right. There is an enormous amount of sensitivity around putting up petrol prices, and yes, it is only 0.045 cents a litre. It's only three cents a tank of gas, or if you're one of the gas guzzlers that the National Party members drive, probably closer to 10. But nevertheless, it is a small amount, but it is very sensitive right at the moment. And we have seen in recent weeks the price of petrol falling, but falling slowly. When the New Zealand dollar fell, immediately, the day after the New Zealand dollar corrected, the price of petrol went up again. And I think there's something that we need to be looking very, very closely at here. That the petrol companies, and we need to look at exactly who's extracting that margin, the petrol companies, the retailers, the wholesalers, whoever it is. We need to be making sure that the consumer is getting a decent deal, because I don't believe right at the moment they are. And I was AA, which Automobile Association, not the Alcoholics Anonymous, the Automobile Association has been following this very closely. Has been doing a great deal of work in this area, and due credit to them for doing that. Even they were saying that particularly with the price of diesel, they could not understand why the price of diesel had not come down further, and why the price of diesel had gone up as quickly as it had once the New Zealand dollar had started to fall, and therefore the cost of our imports started to rise. So this is a very sensitive issue, and I want to agree again with Stuart Nash when he says we need to watch this very, very closely, because what we don't want to see is the next minute we turn around and say, well, actually the petrol prices have gone up. Well, that was partly due to the government, to the Parliament, agreeing to putting an extra condition or extra tax or extra levy on our petrol. That's certainly not the case when it is we're looking at 0.045 cents a litre. I mean, less than half a cent a litre. So this is we've supported this. The Labor Party has supported this bill because it is part of our treaty obligation. We acknowledge that. We acknowledge that as part of our agreement with the International Energy Agreement and Article 2 in particular, that we need to have in place a 3-month, effectively a buffer, that will enable us to have safety of supply that we need. But it also goes a little bit further than that, and also enables New Zealand to, along with other countries, to be able to effectively look after ourselves so that oil-producing countries don't spike supply as they have done in the past, certainly in the 1970s. So this gives us a little bit of a breathing space while action can be taken should that happen with one particular big supplier, for example. So it is part of our international obligation. As an international citizen, we adhere to that, we play a big part in that, and we will go ahead with it, and that's the reason, sir. Certainly as Foreign Affairs spokesperson, I am in agreement with why we should sign up to this and agree with the government on this. This is not a club. This is not one of those clubs you join when you want to just go into embark on a international expedition into a war zone. It's not a club, it's a treaty. And we have obligations under that treaty. And just on that, sir, I think that the Prime Minister's statement, the Minister of Defence today, was wholly unconvincing about the rationale for wanting to go into Iraq, not understanding if they could make a difference or if any idea of how they were going to get out. But coming back to the bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I say, the costs of maintaining this degree of backup and this treaty have gone up. This bill provides a smoother way of being able to recognise those Mr. Chair?
David Shearer.
To recognise the way that those costs have gone up, sir, by allowing Order in Council and the Minister to be able to set the levy rather than having to come before Parliament. It's a much more efficient way of doing it. However, we of course will be keeping a close eye on what the Minister does, because we don't want to give the Minister carte blanche to just raise prices whenever he fancies to do that. So, I mean, I thought the regulatory impact statement was a good one. It was thorough, and it went and looked at many of the other options besides this particular option to increase the levies. And I just want to run through these and just really to reassure the public that this has been looked at. And we understand we have these obligations. We understand we want to be part of this treaty. Therefore, we must meet those obligations. And the various options that were looked at was whether we should embark on this treaty or through ticket contracts, effectively through a process of ensuring that we have the requisite amount of fuel essentially stockpiled, or whether we should do that domestically. And that was looked at, and it was decided that the domestic stockholding was not a feasible option. It wasn't as efficient as using the ticket contracts. It certainly had much greater overhead costs in terms of what would have imposed on New Zealanders, and so as a result of that, they went with the with the ticket contracts. There was Moby then looked at the obligations, who should be responsible for fulfilling those IEA, the International Energy Agreement obligations, whether it should be the oil industry or whether it should be the government. And it was decided that the government, given that it was able to enter easily into international treaties and for various other reasons, that it was a much better way of going about this rather than imposing those costs on the oil industry, which obviously in turn would pass on to consumers. And then the ministry then looked at how should the costs of these obligations, our agreement obligations, be funded, whether we just pass it through Crown funding or a fuel monitoring levy. And the best system, sir, was going through a funding ticketed regime generated by a monitoring levy. So I think, sir, that there has been a good deal of work done on this. As Claire Curran said in the Select Committee, there were some good, although very few, submissions made to the Select Committee. It was looked at in some depth. There were good questions asked. And in front of us here we have the end result of that in the committee stage. And I think, sir, that we've reached a pretty good point with where we are, and that's the reason the Labour Party has supported it. But I just want to add, sir, before I finish, support to Megan Woods, Dr. Megan Woods' amendment, sir, SOP, to exempt biofuels, because I think she's absolutely right. Biofuels is the answer. It might not be seen by this government as being the answer, but this government is unfortunately intractably tied to tired old thinking when it comes to the oil industry and alternative fuels. Biofuels, unfortunately, the support to biofuels were cut immediately in 2009. This government came into office, and it effectively killed our biofuel industry. As Dr. Woods said, Scion, our forestry research institute, has done some extraordinarily good work in turning forestry waste and forest land into an ability to produce biofuel, a biomass that will be able to support a biofuels industry. I think that should get as much encouragement as it possibly can, and thereby giving an exemption to the biofuels industry, biofuels in this bill, sir, as we have done for jet fuels. It's 85% of all fuels, I think, is covered by this levy, but jet fuels are not. We could do exactly the same with biofuels with very little problem, and that would enable us to send a very strong signal to the biofuels industry, that this is an industry of the future. It's something which New Zealand has comparative advantage in, and we should be able to support
Jamie
it.
Lee
Thank you,
Ross.
Mr. Speaker.
I move that the question be now put.
The question is that the question be now put. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 opposed.
Green Party.
14 in favour.
See?
New Zealand First.
11 opposed.
Māori Party.
2 in favour.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Members, the ayes are 77, the noes are 43. The question will be put. So we move to the vote. Now order please when we're doing votes. Order, order. There's no talking when I'm speaking. We come to the votes on parts 1 and 2 and clauses 1 to 3, but first we have an SOP number 45 in the name of Dr. Megan Woods. The question is that the amendment be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote. Order. We're in a voting process. Ask the clerk to conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
32 in favour.
Green Party.
14 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
11 in favour.
Māori Party.
2 opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 opposed.
United Future.
1 opposed.
Members, the ayes are 57, the noes are 63. The amendment is not agreed to. The question now is that parts 1 and 2 and clauses 1 to 3 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. I will report this bill without amendment presently. Members, the time has come for me to leave the chair for the dinner break. I shall resume the chair at 7:30.